Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, even when you were completely alone? It was supposed to be perfect. The fall of 2018, crisp air, golden leaves carpeting the ground. My wife and I, just married, had packed up the car with camping gear, our 2 overprotective dogs, and a plan to disappear into the mountains for a 20-day honeymoon. The campsite we picked was on the other side of the country, isolated, serene, nestled between tall pines and whispering creeks. We'd been to places like this before. We knew how to handle the wild, but nothing prepared us for what was waiting on the other side of that gravel road. It was the 4th day of our trip. By then, we'd settled into a rhythm. Mornings filled with hikes, afternoons under the shade of pine trees, evenings spent sipping whiskey by the fire. Our dogs had adjusted too, guarding our sight like it was their kingdom. That afternoon, we were playing cards, arguing over who was cheating, when I suddenly felt something off. A shift in the air, the kind you feel in your bones before you even understand why. And that's when I saw her. She was just there, standing at the edge of our sight, as if she'd materialized out of thin air. "Can I pet your dog?" she asked. Now here's the thing. My dogs always alert me before someone approaches. But this time, they didn't bark until after she spoke. And when they did, it wasn't their usual bark. It was startled, defensive, like they'd woken from a bad dream. I told her no, politely, but firmly. She didn't leave. She just stood there, like she wasn't entirely here, but not entirely gone either. I asked if she needed anything. She said no. Then, without another word, she walked off, not down the trail, not toward the common area, just across the gravel path to another site, one with a tent already pitched, a site we knew belonged to 2 younger girls we'd seen the day before. And here's the part that chilled me. She pulled a small, 1-person tent from her bag and began setting it up next to theirs, without knocking, without asking. That night, the girls didn't come back, and the next morning, she was still there, sitting cross-legged in front of her tent, reading a book, like nothing was wrong. The next morning started off quiet, crisp mountain air, smell of pine sap, the distant chatter of campers making coffee. For a moment, we forgot about her. I was headed to the camp showers. As I passed by her tent, she sat cross-legged again, flipping through the same book. The flap was open. She didn't look up. But on my way back, her tent was zipped shut and jiggling. Just as I'm approaching her sight on the way to mine, she unzips her tent, and I immediately see that she is completely nude. Kneeling at the entrance of her tent, she stretched like a model in some bizarre nature magazine. While she does this, she lets out what I only describe as an exotic moan. It was pretty obvious she was putting on a show for me. I didn't stop, just walked straight back and told my wife. We both laughed, nervously, but chalked it up to weird camper behavior. Until the hike. We headed out for a trail that looped around to a hidden waterfall. The trail was easy enough, and we were making good time. At the clearing before the denser forest, we stopped to catch our breath and take some photos. And then she appeared again. Same blank expression, same posture, just standing at the mouth of the trail behind us. Like she'd been following for hours. Our dogs noticed first, growling, ears pinned back. My wife noticed next, so we walked faster. She walked faster. We stopped for water. She stopped too, stood still, didn't pass us, just watched. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe she was shy. Maybe she didn't want to be rude. But deep down, something darker whispered, "She knows where we are." We ended the hike early, taking the short loop back, jogging every time the trail curved, so she'd lose sight of us. We didn't see her again that day, but the unease lingered. The dogs wouldn't settle, and every time a pine branch creaked or snapped in the wind, I turned, half expecting to see her standing there. By Friday, the 2 girls she'd set up beside were gone, and still, she remained. That night, our friends from the city arrived. We hadn't seen them in over a year. Laughter, stories, beers. It almost felt normal again. I hadn't even had time to warn them about her, until she appeared, out of nowhere, right inside our camp. She asked if she could pet my dog again. "I'd rather you didn't," I told her, trying to sound calm. She didn't flinch, just stood there, eyes locked on me, like she was trying to memorize every inch of my face. And then, she dropped everything and ran. We finally told our friends everything. The stalking, the silent stares, the scream. They agreed this was no longer just weird, this was dangerous. Later that night, around 11 p.m., she came back. Same casual entrance, like she belonged. She looked at us all, smiled and said, "You guys have a lot of room. Think I could stay with you tonight?" She pointed toward our camper, then toward our tents. We could have a lot of fun in there, together. My buddy, slightly drunk, blurted, "Did you just propose a gangbang?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly turned her head toward me, locked eyes, smiled wide. "I like your friend." Then, like every other time, she turned, walked off into the forest, and vanished. We didn't sleep much that night. Every twig snapped, every gust of wind felt like a warning. The dogs barked at nothing. Our friends kept their headlamps on inside the tent, and me, I sat up, whiskey in hand, watching the tree line, waiting. But she never came back. Instead, her campsite, what was left of it, told the next part of the story. Clothes, food, trash, scattered everywhere. The tent, gone. We were on edge, but we told the park rangers what we knew. They took notes, told us they'd keep an eye out. And then, for 2 whole days, nothing. Just silence, almost enough to make us think we'd imagined it all. Until our last night. There's a lookout point near the back of the campground. A wooden bench, some bolted chairs. Perfect spot to watch the sun dip behind the mountains. We went there to say goodbye. That's when my wife froze, camera still at her eye. She didn't speak, short pause, just nodded slowly toward the trees below. There she was, down the slope, standing half hidden behind a tree, watching us. That's when my wife, take a photo, framed the valley, but tilted the lens just enough to catch her silhouette. Click. Minutes later, she stood, walked down the slope, and vanished behind the trees. We never saw her again. To anyone else, the photo is nothing, just a girl sitting quietly in nature. But to us, it's proof that sometimes the scariest people aren't ghosts or monsters or killers. They're the ones who walk silently into your life and leave behind a feeling that never quite goes away. Have you ever felt like someone was standing just outside your vision, watching you, but the moment you turned your head, there was nothing? I used to rent a small house on the far edge of a quiet Oregon suburb, right where the streetlight stopped and the forest began. The winters there were long, gray, and heavy, the kind where even the moon seemed reluctant to show itself. Most people would have found the darkness unsettling, but I didn't mind. In fact, I liked it. The quiet made the place feel safe. Or at least that's what I told myself. Still, there was one thing I could never quite explain. Every so often, when I pulled into my driveway at night, I'd catch the faint smell of cigarette smoke. It was strange. My nearest neighbor lived 3 houses down, and they didn't smoke. The smell never lingered for long, just enough for me to notice before it vanished into the cold air. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the wind carried it from somewhere down the street. Maybe it was just my imagination, but on one particular night, in the dead of winter, I pulled up to my house, and the smoke wasn't faint. It was strong, fresh, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever had been smoking it hadn't gone far. That night, I was running late. I'd stayed at work an extra couple of hours, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, the sky was a solid sheet of dark gray. The porch light carved a small circle into the darkness, but beyond that, nothing. As I stepped out of my car, the cold air hit me, and so did the smell. Stronger this time. Cigarette smoke, sharp and recent, like the ember had only just been flicked to the ground. I scanned the yard, the fence line, the space between my porch and the trees. Nothing. My breath made pale clouds in the air. No sound but the hum of my car cooling. I told myself to let it go, locked the door behind me, took a quick shower. By the time I crawled into bed, it wasn't even 7 p.m., but exhaustion was pulling me under. I don't know how long I slept before the sound woke me. It wasn't subtle, heavy, deliberate footsteps on the floor below. For a moment, I thought it might be Mark, my friend who sometimes stopped by after work to use the shower. He had a spare key, but he always texted first. I reached for my phone, blinking against the blinding light of the screen. No messages. "Mark," I called out. Silent. Then, the sound of someone running, fast, directly beneath me. Have you ever had a moment where your body knows you're in danger, before your mind can even catch up? My heart was already hammering before I even moved. Whoever was in my house, they weren't trying to be quiet. And then I heard the first creak on the staircase. The sound of footsteps on the stairs snapped me into motion. I didn't think. I reacted. I threw back the blankets, crossed the room in 3 long strides, and yanked open my closet door. My hands fumbled for the attic hatch above the shelf. The old wood groaned as I pushed it open. By the time I grabbed the edge and began to pull myself up, the footsteps had reached the top of the stairs. There were 3 doors in that hallway, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom at the far end. My door was still closed. I heard him pass it, heading for the bathroom first. That gave me just enough time to hoist myself into the attic, my legs dangling in open air. My pulse roared in my ears. Then, he was back, fast. The bedroom door slammed open. I froze, crouched low just a foot above the opening, my eyes fixed on the dark rectangle below. I saw him in fragments, faded jeans with frayed cuffs, boots caked in mud. His breathing was heavy, uneven. He stood there for a moment, scanning the room. Then the closet door jerked open. From my angle, I could see his legs, the scuffed leather of his boots, the way his stance shifted, like he was deciding whether to climb up. And then he whispered something I couldn't make out, just a low mutter, broken by a sharp exhale. Do you know what's worse than being found? Knowing that they know exactly where you are, and they're taking their time. Suddenly, he stepped back. A loud crash echoed through the room, my bed flipping over, followed by a guttural, frustrated scream. The sound made my skin crawl. It was almost identical to the way my stepfather used to lose control years ago. He stomped away, back down the stairs, but I didn't move, not yet. I waited until the house fell completely silent. No footsteps, no crashes, just the faint ticking of the clock in the hallway. I started counting in my head. When I reached 1,000, I lowered myself slowly from the attic, every muscle trembling. The first thing I noticed was my bed, flipped upside down, sheets tangled on the floor. My phone was gone. I grabbed the old landline on my nightstand and called the police, my voice low and unsteady. When they arrived, I didn't go downstairs until I heard their voices. The first floor looked like a storm had ripped through it. Chairs overturned, shelves emptied, food scattered across the kitchen. But what stuck out most was the knife block. Every knife in its place, except one. A single chef's knife was missing. The officers found the side door pried open, cigarette butts along the fence, and a few burned scraps of foil. One of them muttered something about meth addicts. I barely heard him. All I could think about was that knife, out there, somewhere, in the hands of the man who had been in my bedroom less than an hour ago. They told me to stay somewhere else for the night. I didn't. Instead, I pushed a heavy shelf against the broken door and stayed awake until morning, checking the yard with a flashlight every few minutes. I lived in that house for 3 more years. No break-ins, no more footsteps. But I never stopped practicing, getting from my bed to the closet, climbing up into the attic without a sound. When I finally moved, I thought I was done with that fear. The new place was brighter, with neighbors close on all sides. I felt safe. Until last week, I was unpacking boxes in the garage when I found it. A crumpled pack of cigarettes shoved into the corner, the same brand the police had collected from my old fence line. I don't smoke, and I couldn't tell you how long I stood there, staring at it, before I realized the pack was only half empty. Which means, whoever left it might still be coming back for the rest. Have you ever lived with someone long enough that you start recognizing the exact sound of their footsteps? I do. Or I thought I did. My boyfriend Jason and I had lived together for almost 2 years in a small apartment near the coast in Sarasota. That Tuesday started like any other, except for the silence. We'd had a fight the day before, something stupid about forgetting a family birthday, but the kind of stupid that makes you sleep back to back and not text all day. He'd forgotten to call my dad on his birthday. I overreacted and he got defensive. We both went to bed angry and woke up pretending the other person didn't exist. We'd done that once or twice before. It always blew over. Jason left that morning like usual, didn't kiss me goodbye. He teaches 2 towns over, a short drive. Said his last class would run late today. So when I heard the front door click open at 4:02 p.m., I was surprised. I didn't move right away. I just laid there, under the throw blanket on our bed, listening. The footsteps came next. Not hurried, not loud, just steady. I recognized the sound. Jason's heel always lands heavier on the right side. Years of leaning into a skateboard as a teenager. I've teased him about it 100 times, so I thought it was him. Of course I did. But there was something off. The steps didn't lead to the kitchen like they usually do. They didn't stop by the coat rack or the bathroom or anywhere really. They just lingered, walking slowly, circling, like someone getting familiar with the space. That was the first moment I felt something tighten in my chest. Jason doesn't walk like that. I sat up, one earbud still half in, eyes on the bedroom door. It was closed. I waited for the handle to turn, for him to poke his head in and maybe crack a smile. But instead, the handle turned just slightly and then stopped. I didn't move. My breath hitched. Then came the hand. White as paper, nails painted a deep glossy red, fingers long and too still. They wrapped around the doorknob and slowly, gently closed the door again. She never looked in. She never said a word. She didn't need to, because in that moment I knew whoever was in my apartment wasn't someone I had ever invited in. For a long, stretching moment, I remained motionless. I told myself I was being dramatic, that I hadn't really seen what I thought I saw. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize, something had shifted in the atmosphere of our apartment. When I finally summoned the courage to move, I peeled the blanket off my lap and stood up, slowly, cautiously, as if any sudden movement might stir something best left undisturbed. The bedroom door stood closed, exactly as before, giving no hint of what had just happened. but the silence pressing against it was louder than any noise. I reached out and opened it gently, just a crack at first. The hallway outside was dim, lit only by the soft gray light leaking through our living room window blinds. Everything looked untouched, familiar, safe, until I noticed the entryway. There were no shoes. Jason always left his shoes half kicked off by the mat, but the space where they should have been was bare, and in that detail, something clicked. Whoever had entered wasn't Jason. Whoever had entered hadn't planned on being noticed. That's when I heard it again, a sound so soft it was almost subconscious, bare feet making slow, deliberate contact with old wood. And it wasn't coming from the front door. It came from the kitchen. I didn't breathe. My body froze as every instinct screamed that something was off. I stepped into the hallway, moving with the kind of slowness usually reserved for dreams or nightmares. I glanced toward the kitchen, empty. Then toward the living room, also empty. But just as I began to exhale, I noticed the scent. A thick, intrusive sweetness that didn't belong to me or Jason. It hovered in the air like a fingerprint left behind. Lavender perfume. And just like that, my stomach dropped. Jason hates floral scents, and I don't wear perfume. The air smelled thick with lavender, not like it had been sprayed, but like someone had worn it, moved through the space slowly, and left it behind like a trail. I walked toward the front door. It was shut, locked. Nothing seemed out of place. The rug was flat. The lamp by the window sat exactly where it always did. Our little bowl of spare keys on the console table was untouched, at least at first glance. Still, I bent down, half expecting to find a shoe print, a smudge, a dropped earring, anything. But there was nothing, no signs of intrusion. No indication someone had forced their way in. Except I knew someone had, and more importantly, someone had left. The moment that thought registered, I backed away from the door, retreating into the hallway like a reflex. My hand reached for my phone, dialing Jason with fingers that could barely press the numbers straight. He picked up and I asked him if his mom or sister might come over unannounced. He told me no. Don't move. I'm calling the police. It only took them 6 minutes to arrive. 2 officers swept through the apartment. They asked me to wait on the balcony while they checked every closet, every cabinet, even under the bed. But when they came back out, their faces were tight with that polite neutrality that tells you they don't believe you, but they can't say it out loud. "There's no sign of forced entry," one of them said. "Nothing's missing. Are you sure someone was here?" I nodded, but even I could hear how fragile it sounded. Then he added, as if to offer a crumb of comfort, "Maybe you left the door unlocked and didn't realize it." I wanted that to be true, but we had a habit. Jason always locked the door before he left in the morning, and I always double-checked it by noon, right after making lunch. The officers left around 6. Jason arrived not long after, rushed, pale, eyes scanning every corner, like he expected her to still be hiding somewhere. He walked through the apartment, checking the locks again and again. I just kept staring at the door, willing it to stay closed. It wasn't until the next morning that he noticed something was missing. He told me that the orange kitchen scissors were missing. I obviously freaked out. We searched the entire kitchen, every drawer, every shelf, even behind the fridge. Jason pulled out the trash bag and dug through it, just in case. Nothing. They hadn't been misplaced. They had vanished. Whoever had entered our home, uninvited and unseen, had walked past my handbag, left the coin jar untouched, ignored the laptop on the table, had taken nothing of value, except a pair of scissors. After that day, nothing ever felt the same. Jason installed a security camera outside the apartment, and I kept pepper spray within reach at all times, even in the shower. 6 weeks later, we moved. A different neighborhood, farther from the city, second floor unit with double locks and no shared entryway. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, that we could box the whole thing up like a bad dream and leave it in that old apartment. But the past has a way of following quietly. It was a Thursday when the package arrived. No return address, no shipping label, just a plain brown envelope sealed with a single strip of tape sitting on the welcome mat outside our new place. Inside, wrapped in a piece of black fabric, was our kitchen scissors. The same ones. Clean, untouched, not rusted, not damaged. The orange rubber grip smooth and familiar beneath my fingers, just as I remembered